Hello. I know there's no one here yet, and I'll address it when I possibly get someone in here in the chat. We'll see, or someone watching. We'll see if that even happens. I hope it does. I have a haircut. It's a lot shorter than it was. I have one like. I don't know who it is. Or I have one person watching at the very least. I don't know. At this point in time, I'm just going to assume that it's probably my mom, unless the person chat said something in the chat and it's not my mom, because I'm that much of a dork. I at least have an appropriate shirt on. Well, semi-appropriate. I mean, it is war gray. It is, war Greymon. So, but it has a sun on it, and we are kind of talking about, you know, One Piece. And yeah, not surprised. The one person watching is my mother. That's not surprising in the slightest. I'll at least double check. Is the volume okay? Can you hear me okay? I'm hoping that is at least somewhat useful, or somewhat knowledgeable. Um, yeah, got my hair cut. So that was fun. Got like 6 or 7 inches chopped off. This is about as short as I've had it for quite a while. I mean, I cut it short a couple of years ago and dyed it blue. So, there was that. It's also been dyed black before, but that was like, was that 10 years ago? That might have been 10 years ago. So, um, so kind of, I mean, yeah, there's stuff that happened in the chapter this week. And yes, I'm aware of the fact that my mother is the only one in the chat right now and the only one watching right now. So, I'll give it a little bit and see if anybody shows up. Um, I hope so. I hope other people show up. Not that I don't like you watching, Mom. I want other people in here, so it's not just you. Um, um, so yeah, there's that whole fun bit. Um, but I was gonna pull up the chapter and I was gonna go through it a little bit, and I just wanted to see if my thoughts on like some of the stuff that happened in the chapter a little bit more than what I already put in the video for the review. I mean, there's not too much that I missed. I mean, like I'm sorry, I have to say the cover page with Robin and the crocodile that she dressed up is adorable, because I have a feeling Robin would actually make friends with a crocodile because she kind of worked with one in the past. But um, I mean, like, all the Straw Hats have like their animal counterparts, and that's just kind of fun. None of them is a crocodile. Robin's is, what was Robin's? I don't remember what Robin's like spirit animal was. It wasn't a robin. I know that it was not a robin. Um, Robin's spirit animal was not a robin. Because Luffy was a cat, Zoro is a tiger. Or no, Luffy's not a cat. Luffy's a monkey. I'm an idiot. Because I'm blanking on what this is. No. Oh my God, there's 2 people watching the stream. Yay! Hi, other person who's not my mother, unless for some reason she's watching on 2 devices at the same time, which seems very redundant. What was it? Okay, whoever it was left. Whoever the other person was left. We'll forget about that for now. But I mean, like, some of the stuff about the chapter that I did like a lot. I mean, like, yes, it's funny that Luffy is just like, okay, I gobbled up all this food and digestion activate, and then it's just like gone. And I'm just like, sometimes I wouldn't mind Luffy's metabolism. That wouldn't be bad. We got Gear 5th back. So that's nice. We still have, Saturn being an a-hole as he is, which is not surprising. Yeah, there is kind of there is kind of this thing in the chapter where, like the look on Bonnie's face when Atlas tells her that, oh, hey, you're you're actually the one that can be in charge of the pacifista. It's just like, you couldn't have mentioned that to her sooner. I mean, I understand why they can't like reveal that right at the beginning of the arc, like right when right when she has like what just happened in one of the more recent episodes where she interacts with the policeman Kuma, where if she had said something about like "Daddy, please stop," as opposed to like "Don't hurt my daddy" in that regard, then that would have been a different way. That would have been the way of revealing that. But then we would have gone through the whole arc knowing that, oh my God, Bonnie can control the pacifista, and then we would have been like told about the hierarchy and everything like that. So I mean, like, I understand where they're coming from with that, but it's also like, you know what else can be explained with that? What else can we do in that regard, for that? But I love that Bonnie is just like, no, Seraphim, help, the pacifista, please help us, and everything like that. And I mean, that does go along with the fact of, if that S Bear should obey her as well at this point in time, given the fact that he is based off of Kuma, and that Vegapunk probably set that up that way. But I'm also like, I honestly do not think that Bonnie has interacted with S Bear at this point in time, or to this point in time, because yes, they were around, but she wasn't like actually interacting with him to the point. And again, the whole thing with like her finally seeing Luffy, where that's revealed to her where he is Nika, that makes perfect sense. Where it's just like Luffy doesn't know that he's, the embodiment of Nika at this point in time. He just thinks this is just him at his freest, which is exactly what it is. It is Luffy at his, freest, or his most free, or however he wants to, describe it. But I'm just not exactly sure. I mean, like, the big reveal at the end of it's Dory and Broggy are on their way, and that they know that Luffy is the sun god, that they know that Luffy is Nika. That is kind of one of those things where it's just like okay, we'll see what happens here. Like, how are they going to make that? I mean, like, they have to explain how they figured that out, how they figured out that Luffy was the sun god. I mean, the easy answer is Shanks told them, or something else happened. Oimo and Kashi showed up and said something, or because they still have to explain how they got back to Elbaf, how they ended up back there, beyond the whole thing of like, well, their duel ended, but if the duel ended, then that means one of them is dead, and we wouldn't have both of them at this point in time. You know, both of the giants wouldn't be there. Dory and Broggy wouldn't be there together, at the helm of this pirate ship on their way to, try to get Luffy out of, try to get Luffy to show up there, off to go get Luffy from Egghead. And I mean, like, they said exactly how they know that Luffy's at Egghead is because of the papers going out. So that's the easy explanation there for that, which is reasonable. And I mean, now the Straw Hats, because they have Bonnie on their side, now have the pacifista on their side. So that's going to be at least somewhat helpful in regards to them being able to get out of, get off of Egghead, or at the very least deal with a bunch of the Marine ships, or at the very least cuts down a bunch of the numbers on the Marine ships in that regard. So, I mean, like, that'll be interesting. I'm still watching the thing to see if anybody else shows up who's not my mother. I mean, like, someone else showed up at one point and then they left, and nobody else has shown back up yet. So it's just my mom still in the audience, and she doesn't quite understand what I'm talking about very much. I ramble to her about One Piece a lot, and I appreciate that she listens because she acts as a sounding board to a degree. So I appreciate that. Brenda is not up here. She's downstairs with my mom as opposed to upstairs with me. She's like, no, you're going to close the door. I'm going to go downstairs now, or maybe she'll show back up later and I'll have to open the door and let her in. We'll see. Hey, look, somebody else showed up to watch. Hi, whoever you are. I mean, in regards to some of the stuff with you know, with Bonnie, I love the fact that now with Bonnie in the chapter that she kind of has like there's that moment where it's just her looking up at what is happening, looking up at Luffy jumping across the sky in his Nika form, and it's just her. And it is literally that moment of like all of this faith that she has had in her life in the sun god Nika, this faith that her father has had throughout his life in the sun god Nika, and going all the way back through Clap and through all the others and everything like that. Even the people on the island who Kuma helped, um, in the name of Nika, in the name of wanting to be a hero like Nika, that kind of that that kind of interaction there is this great kind of affirmation here for Bonnie for seeing this happen, for seeing Luffy Luffy in this form. And yes, she's upset about the fact that Vegapunk just got stabbed by Saturn. I think a lot of us are upset by the fact that Vegapunk just got stabbed by Saturn. And she wants to of course save Vegapunk because he is kind of the closest thing. I was gonna say he's like the closest thing to a grandpa that she has, which is kind of true, but it's also she had King Bulldog and Dowager Queen Connie back on Sorbet, and while she probably interacted with Connie a lot more than she did Bulldog, Bulldog probably still acted somewhat of like a grandfatherly type figure type of a thing to her, um with Dowager Queen Connie acting as this great grandmotherly type figure there who is clearly smarter than some of the other people that live on the island, because she's able to figure out pretty quickly that Alpha is bad. um so I mean that's not that hard to figure out there. I mean, let's see, they built a giant wall around the church to keep everybody out and keep Bonnie in, and all of that stuff. I would get suspicious of that woman very quickly, if I had Alpha as my nurse. Um, if I had her as my nurse. And yeah, the whole thing about like if Alpha really is Khalifa's sister, or Khalifa and Alufa, uh, I I would be completely fine with that. That it's just either one of them slightly older or one of them slightly younger, and I can see that maybe. I mean, okay, so I was trying to think of how would be a better way of doing it. Would be either if Khalifa is the younger one and the more successful one out of the two sisters in regards to Latchkey's daughters, her being more successful in that regard because she was part of CP9, and at the time that like the flashback with Bonnie and everything is going on, and we meet Alpha, then that would have been during the same time frame when Khalifa herself would be undercover at Water 7 with Kaku and Lucci and Blueno, trying to get the Pluton blueprints away from Iceberg and everything, and figuring out that would have been during the same time frame because they were there for like what was 4 or 5 years, something like that they were undercover before everything went down on Water 7. But it would be very interesting to get a little bit more of that backstory. That might be something that gets asked in an SBS question of like, hey, Oda, what else can you tell us about Alpha? Is she Khalifa's sister? Is she older? Is she younger? How much of a rivalry do they have? Type of a thing, and I mean, like, if even if she's not related to Khalifa, I mean, she probably is. Then she, Latchkey probably set his daughters to be competitive with each other. So they will both try their best to try to become these assassins and spies and undercover agents and everything like that, to work their way through everything. Hi, other person who showed up. It's up to 2 people. We'll see how long that lasts. Say hi in the chat if you want. If not, that's fine too. But I mean, like, Alpha and Khalifa, like, I want to know what type of a horrible relationship they have, or if it's just Alpha has an issue with Khalifa because their father Latchkey liked Khalifa more because Khalifa was more successful in everything, and just like all the different techniques and everything like that they learned as CP agents. And if it ended up being that, then that's why she like rips up all of the letters, because she's angry about the fact that her father and her sister have a better relationship than she does with either of them, um, type of a thing. That would be an interesting thing. Um, but in regards to back to Bonnie, I sidetracked to Khalifa. Sorry, um, Khalifa and Alpha. In regards to Bonnie, I love the fact that it is this like affirmation of, her and her father's faith in Nika, and even to a degree Ginny's faith in Nika from being around Kuma and all of that stuff. And now Bonnie is going to get to meet Luffy, get to interact with Luffy post realizing what he is. And I mean, like, I can see her maybe being a little bit of like a like a little bit of like that little girl coming out and being very, oh my god, I'm getting to meet this deity type of a thing. And this deity that I've watched my whole life. I was trying to make a comparison in there to like comparing Bonnie maybe like fangirling over Luffy, but I'm like, I don't think it would be quite fangirling, because she's already interacted with Luffy. Now, also, Bonnie could be very brutal in regards to dealing with someone if she has to. I mean, like, she didn't hesitate to like flip kick Luffy when he was trying to defend her against the police Kuma. Earlier on in the arc, she like flip kicked him out of the way and everything like that, so he wouldn't hurt Kuma, so he wouldn't hurt the pacifista. Of course, she didn't realize that he was a pacifista at the time, because, as far as we're aware, Bonnie has not interacted with the pacifista personally. And of course, she's still, a 12-year-old girl at heart. And even when all the pacifista were being rolled out 2 years ago, and I think we know that she was watching Marineford, what happened then. So she probably would have seen the pacifista that were at Marineford and seen the interaction that well, I don't know if she would have necessarily seen the interaction that like Ivankov had with um, you know, PX0 at that time, with like, Doflamingo explaining everything that's going on. Mostly the reason I would think that is because of the fact that, while yes, a lot of that was being broadcast to the world, and Buggy had the snail somewhere within that time frame, and he was like broadcasting to the world what was going on. I don't think we know if he like specifically showed that interaction, or if he was more like his new gang of cohorts were like focusing on him, and then like focusing on Luffy, or focusing on what was going on with like Ace or Whitebeard or something like that. Maybe not necessarily Ivankov interacting with Kuma. Um, and yes, I would love it if at some point, if Bonnie joined the Revolutionary Army, I would really like that. To like carry on her father's legacy, her father and her mother's legacy at that point in time, in regards to Ginny being involved there too with the Revolutionary Army. I would love it if she joined them, but the thing is, you know, she doesn't have they don't really have a way of contacting them. They don't have the Den Mushi number for the Revolutionary Army, as far as we're aware, because as far as we're aware, Sabo did not give it to any of them, did not give it to Zoro or Frankie or Usopp, or even Law. Definitely didn't give it to Luffy before he left Dressrosa, back when he was interacting with them then. I mean, I guess it's possible that Robin might have it, but she also knows that maybe the Revolutionary Army should only be contacted as like a last resort, because reasons in the fact of like their transponder snails can be hacked, as we saw with what happened with Leloucia, or supposedly what happened with Leloucia. What was Leloucia again? The hole in the ground now is what it is. But I mean, in regards to some of that, I think Bonnie would get along fine with that. Um, I mean, in regards to, like, we saw Bonnie and Sabo interact at Marie Joie during the little reverie flashback that we got with like that explanation there. We saw them interact there. And Bonnie trusted Sabo enough to entrust getting her father's body, as in the, the PX0, getting that off of, that out of Marie's, while she trusted him enough to do that. So that wasn't necessarily a problem in her opinion. It's like she left her dad's body in the care of the Revolutionary Army because she was either aware of the fact that her father used to be a member of the Revolutionary Army, like maybe he told her stories of that, during his time frame, between when she started to develop the sapphire scales to when he had to leave the island again to travel again, trying to find her a cure and everything like that. It would be like maybe he told her stories about the Revolutionary Army and she knows about his connection to the Revolutionary Army, that type of a thing. Maybe she's maybe I mean, I was gonna say would I mean, Connie and Bulldog might know. Definitely, like the Diogo and the other and Tots and whatever would, like, they would know about Kuma being a member of the Revolutionary Army because they were Kuma's friends during all that time frame. Kuma and Jenny's friends during all that time frame. But whether or not Bonnie would have necessarily been told stories about the Revolutionary Army itself is a little bit left up for debate. And how that would land, how that would, how much of that knowledge she would have. So that would be one thing. For like why she would trust the Revolutionary Army, trust Sabo with that for like that part of the mission, and which I mean kind of was ended up being pointless because I mean if Kuma had still been on Marie Joie, you would think that this type of thing may still have happened where he would have still, left Marie Joie and made his way to Egghead Island and just would have ended up on Egghead Island sooner. But the Revolutionary Army got a hold of him. We know that he talked to Dragon because we just saw this in one of the more recent episodes where where Dragon is talking to the PX0 at that point in time. And he's like, tell me everything that happened. And if it ends up being, what qualifies as everything, like what is he expecting the PX0 to tell him? Like, is he going to tell him everything that happened since he was at Marie Joie? Is he going to tell him everything that happened since Kuma left the Revolutionary Army, since Kuma became a warlord? Where does the everything start there, Dragon? How much is the everything in that regard? For I don't know. That's kind of one of those questions there of like how much qualifies as everything. Also, the other question that I have in regards to Bonnie looking through all of Kuma's memories, so it's like she saw her father's life and everything like that from his birth all the way up through when he, used the pawpaw fruit to send all of his memories, to copy his memories and send them out of his mind and into the memory bubble. So we know that she saw all of that. So she saw, every fricked up thing that happened to him at Marie Joie when he was a kid with, well, in a way, in that regard, she did kind of get to know her grandparents. She got to know Clap and Kuma's mother in that regard. So that would have at least been something nice there. I mean, like she unfortunately does kind of still have the memory of like watching her grandfather get shot in front of her because that's the memory of it that Kuma has. And of course, everything that happened at, at God Valley in regards to like from Kuma's perspective of everything that happened on God Valley, like she probably doesn't know who Rox is at that point in time. Just because Bonnie would have seen parts of those flashbacks, it doesn't mean that she knows everything about like Kuma being at, about, Rox or anything like that. And we didn't see any other interaction beyond him and Ivankov interacting with Big Mom. So we haven't seen any other interaction of him with any of the other Rox pirates or even the Roger pirates in that regard, or even like Garp and the Marines. for how that would land. In regard to, just like watching all of your parents' memories, I mean, that's a long thing to go through, because it's like, we know that Vegapunk tried to study them, and that would have been interesting to watch. For however, Vegapunk would have studied them and gained probably a lot of information about it. Um, I wonder, because during that time frame, he would have had the satellites at that point in time, so he would have already made, maybe not every single one of them, all six of them, but he would have probably had some of them made, and then eventually he would have all six of them. And depending on how much, I would think that dealing with Kuma's memories would be something that Vegapunk would personally do, as opposed to having any of the other satellites deal with it or interact with them, simply because Kuma didn't have a relationship with the other satellites. Maybe right at the end, right before everything was, right before he was fully being, having his memories, copied, and then him being turned fully into the cyborg and everything like that, like, having his ego erased and everything because of Saturn. Maybe he met the other satellites, or at least Vegapunk probably told him about the other satellites, but he probably didn't really have much of a connection with them. And I wonder if some of the information that maybe Vegapunk, if he was able to study the memories, because he had them for 2 years, well, over 2 years, if in some of those memories from studying them and seeing, because part of what it would have been was at least Kuma's memories from being at Marijois would have given, as a slave, unfortunately, would have given Vegapunk a very good idea of what all the slaves went through, but it would also give him an idea of like the luxury that like the celestial dragons live in. And that may have been something that ended up being something that York looked into. And that may be one of the, compounding factors for why York betrayed them all, betrayed the rest of the satellites, and, betrayed Vegapunk and everything. That might be one of the reasons. That she just saw like Kuma's memories, and instead of taking to heart the whole suffering thing that Kuma went through, she just saw the opulence and the decadence and the and the luxury and everything like that the celestial dragons would have had, combined with the descriptions of how well the celestial dragons live and everything like that, and that fed York's desire. That may have been something that involved that compounded that, and everything like that became like a bit of a driving force there for York. And I know that there was like thoughts at one point in time that like, oh, maybe each of the different, the original 7 warlords represent each of the 7 deadly sins. I'm like, some of those line up, not all of them do. Same thing with like maybe some of the maybe some of the satellites have a bit of that in them. And I mean, like, well, I guess that is a possibility that some of the satellites, I mean, like, York literally has desire, which is like greed and gluttony type of a thing. That type of a thing. But there's also, and I mean, Lilith has a little bit of the greed in there too. And then like Atlas is literally wrath. So, and that is one of the 7 deadly sins. But and like Lilith has like the greed with wanting to like, get all the money that the Straw Hats had on the ship, which I don't know how much money they had on the ship to begin with. I think they're flat broke at this point in time. For an Emperor crew, they might be flat broke, because even with the fact that they helped save Wano and everything like that, it's like all of the money that Orochi had is like going to be like resent out to the citizens to like help the citizens and everything like that, which I approve of, or at least that's what I assume is going to happen in that regard. In regards to, helping the citizens of Wano so they can rebuild and everything like that. Then again, also, it's just like Momo will probably be like, oh, hey, I know that Orochi and Kaido were horrible to you guys over the last 20 years, and I'm sorry. So we're not going to have taxes collected for a while. We're just going to focus on getting the country rebuilt, getting getting housing rebuilt, getting roads redone, getting, crops and everything planted so we can know that everybody's going to have food and all of that stuff. Getting a bunch of that stuff taken care of might be higher priority for Momonosuke beyond, trying to get money and coffers and everything like that. Because it's like Orochi taxed them so much, the coffers for the country are probably fine. Plus whatever other treasure Kaido had in like his treasure repository, they can probably try to salvage some of that. That might be one of the things. Hey, I'm up to 3 people watching. Hi, 3 people. Um, um, leave a comment in the chat if you want. If not, that's fine too. But it's like for Momonosuke and for like the Scabbards and Wano, and there went one of them. And for like the Scabbards and Wano and everything like that, and like Hiyori and all of that, like their main focus is going to be on rebuilding the country. Getting towns and everything like that rebuilt, getting everything else taken care of. Yes, there were certain parts of the country that were still in good health and everything like that, in good condition, even with Orochi and Kaido being in charge, but that's not the same thing as like being able to get the people in Ebisu town and Okabore town and all the different other like leftover areas, getting them food and better housing and everything like that, and good clothing and different things along those lines to get those areas better taken care of. And that I hope is something that like Momonosuke and Hiyori and stuff like that focus on. I mean, like that is kind of something that Dressrosa had to do as well, or has to do as well, after Doflamingo kind of shredded it with the bird cage. So there's that. People keep showing up and then leaving. I'm like, I'm sorry if I'm not that entertaining. I told you it was going to be about One Piece, and literally in the name of the stream. But I mean, in regards to some of that, I mean, like that is kind of one of the things that it's like, I would like it if Oda kind of showed some of the like the recovery efforts in Wano, or the recovery efforts in Dressrosa, in some of those areas where they got a lot of, where they had so much destruction to the land and everything like that. And yes, I know that with with Greenville, with Aramaki showing up at Wano, that they were able to, that he was able to like revitalize a lot of the land and everything like that because of his Mori Mori no Mi. So that was helpful, but it's also so that's very helpful in regards to helping rebuild the land, and that's something with that. And it's it's like the same thing with like Fujitora using his his gravity devil fruit to like lift all of that rubble off of Dressrosa to start moving it out of the country. Admittedly, he was using it to quote unquote try to chase Luffy and then drop it on the ship, on the fleet of the ships that were leaving, with the eventual Straw Hat Grand Fleet on them and Luffy on them. So there's that. But having it be that getting the rubble out of the way was like going to be one of the first things that they had to do anyway to start cleaning up the kingdom, and all of that stuff. And no, I do not blame either Wano or Dressrosa for like, as soon as the tyrant is out of the way, that they literally just like, let's party. It's literally what they did. Dressrosa, they threw a big fiesta, basically a big party, and and I went over this in the videos when I talked about Dressrosa, where we just see Viola is dancing and everything like that, and everybody's just happy and and I love that it's just like I don't blame them at all for having like this huge party, and like for so many of them for who had like their family members who had been turned into toys, and now they remember them and they're getting to reconnect with them and possibly apologize and maybe work on some different relationship issues that may have incurred during that time frame when you don't remember that you have a husband or a wife or a girlfriend or a boyfriend or whatever the case may be, that type of stuff, or a parent in certain cases, or a child in some cases. But I mean, like that's going to be something that like maybe they touch upon in Wano. Like I wouldn't mind a cover page series where we kind of see some of the stuff that's happening in Wano, or if we do another like around the world cover series, from the Decks of the World cover series, Yonko, arc or whatever like that, where we have cutting around the world to show everybody's reactions to Luffy being a Yonko, all the way back from all the way back to Fuchsia Village and everything like that, with like Makino and Dawn and some Whoop Slap and everything like that, all the way up through like everything that's happened in Wano, to like Wano's reactions to some of that stuff. I mean, like they know that anyway, but like getting caught up on a bunch of the different characters that we just haven't seen for a while and all of that stuff, and like getting caught up in those regards. And and seeing some of their reactions to seeing, oh my god, Luffy's a Yonko now. Like, I would like to see Katakuri's reaction to that. I think Katakuri would have a little bit of like a good job, kid type of a reaction to that. Shirahoshi would be his ecstatic about it. Same thing with Leo would be so happy. Same thing with Rebecca. They would just be ecstatic about the fact that Luffy is now a Yonko and all of that stuff. Plus, we know that there were other kingdoms that had rebellions in them. Now, they're not necessarily specific as to whether or not the rebellion was 100% against whoever the ruling person in that country was, or if it was a rebellion within the country where like whoever the rulers or the leaders of the country are, where they are with the rebellion and they're going against the world government, as in trying to leave the world government. Because like we know that with Lucia, it was they were rebelling against King Seki and Princess Komain for how horrible that they treated everybody, for the fact of how horrible they treated the citizens. Some of the stuff I'll go over a lot more when I get to like those certain countries, when I get to them in the Royals and Rulers series and stuff like that. But in regards to some of the stuff where, wherever the revolutions are, which hopefully we'll learn about eventually, the other kingdoms where they are taking place. But there's the question of, who is the rebellion against? Is it against the people who are currently ruling them? Like say if there had been a rebellion in the Goa Kingdom where Luffy is from, where Luffy and Sabo and Ace, where they all grew up. If there was a rebellion there, then I can fully buy it being, the people who had lived in the Gray Terminal and the people who lived in like Edgetown and stuff like that, finally taking up arms and going against all the ones that lived in, the capital area, and against Stelly and Isn't Annette and everything like that, like going against them. And the way that they run the kingdom, where it's just everybody at the top has everything, and then everybody at the bottom is just left to starve and scrounge for scraps and everything like that. I can understand if that was maybe where one of the countries that rebelled, because Stelly would definitely be like, oh yeah, send a Seraphim here to help me deal with this filth and everything like that from my country that is trying to destroy our country and everything like that. Whereas, just because Stelly's such a horrible king, probably, and Isn't Annette is probably not that much better of a queen, just given the little bits that we've seen of her. But on the flip side, I could see it being that, Fishman Island, I can see, because while they are technically members of the world government, and the fact that they were invited to Reverie and they finally attended for the first time in the last 200 years since they were invited, or since they were, kind of acknowledged as being, humans in the world government's eyes, that it, that like them rebelling against the world government, given, what they saw, it's like Neptune almost did that when Charlo showed up anyway. He would have rebelled against the world government anyway, regardless, if Charlos had been able to actually capture, Shirahoshi and everything like that, that would have definitely occurred. But like Dressrosa going against the world government in regard, because like the people aren't going to go against Riku and Rebecca and Viola at this point in time, given how loyal they have proved to be to them. But them leaving the world government makes sense. Like Dressrosa choosing to leave the world government because of everything that they've seen, and given the fact that now they can claim themselves as like Yonko territory because Luffy saved them, that would make sense. Same thing with Alabasta. I mean, I know Vivi's not there to be able to make that decision, and like Igaram and Chaka, Igaram and Chaka and Pell and stuff like that, are supposedly still just waiting at, the Red Port or something like that, because it's like, well, our princess is gone. What are we supposed to do? And our king's dead. What are we supposed to do? Who's even in charge right now? That whole situation there. But I mean, like, what other kingdoms were the ones that rebelled? Lucio is the only one that I can remember, but I think that they did list in a couple of others. I think one of the other ones that they listed, let me see if I can pull it up. So, so it's the 8 Nation Revolution, is what it is. And I was trying to remember if they explicitly said which kingdoms were the ones that rebelled. It was Eligus and Tajin. And Tajin was where um, Queen Morun, or whatever, the one with the blonde, the blonde, pretty blonde queen that I have a picture of somewhere, but I don't know how to put it in the stream yet. She seemed to be beloved by her people, but then again, on the surface, Stelly and his group appeared to be beloved by their people as well. So there's that possibility there where maybe it's her kingdom is rebelling against her, but maybe it's also Maroon is like given everything that she saw at the reverie this time around, and Cobra died, and she listened to the speeches that Cobra and Riku made, that she's like, okay, I don't want to be a part of this anymore for the world government, given everything that's been going on. And maybe she decided, that she's going to rebel against the world government or something like that. I don't know. When I eventually get around to some of those kingdoms, I might talk a little bit about that there. Admittedly, those ones are not going to be individual videos for every single kingdom, mostly because there's not enough information to do an individual video about every single one of those little kingdoms that we heard about at Reverie. It'll be like these ones here, these ones here, these ones here, like groups of them to a degree. But I mean, yeah, like they have like that 8 Nation rebellion that's going on, and we don't know which of all the 8 kingdoms are the ones that are rebelling, and whether or not it's rebelling against just their kingdom and in a way against the world government, or whether or not it's the country themselves with the backing of their government are going against the world government. Because like I could buy that for Dressrosa, and I could buy that for Fishman Island, with Neptune putting his backing behind leaving the world government. Same thing with Riku putting his backing behind leaving the world government. But the other countries, we don't know exactly which ones they are. And if Vivi had managed to make it back to Alabasta, then I can definitely see her like cutting all ties with the world government at that point in time. And Koza and her standing next to each other and be like liberation and everything like that. Like that I could understand. Also, yeah, we still have to have like the scene where like Luffy, Sabo, and Vivi are all in the same room, and they get to have that discussion of whatever, of what of what Cobra told Sabo, so that way Vivi knows. And then Luffy will just be like, wait, she has D in her name too? Sabo, yes. Yay, we're family. That would just be Luffy's reaction to that, I think. Vivi might have a little bit more of an emotional reaction to that. One comment I would like to make is like, what would have been, okay, so if Bonnie had not had an interaction with Luffy yet, if she had not interacted with him pre-learning that he was the embodiment of the sun god Nika at this point in time, do you think she would have a different reaction to being around him than she did than just meeting him where he saved her from falling out of the eddy and with all the water in it and everything like that, where he saved her? Well, Jinbei then subsequently saved both of them and Chopper, and then they ended up on the island and everything like that. Like, is she gonna have like a different reaction? That like, what type of a shift in her interaction with Luffy is Bonnie going to have? I mean, that's kind of one of those questions. Or it's like, how much of a shift are you gonna have here, woman, in regards to interacting with Luffy? I don't think it's gonna be like a major shift. I think she's probably gonna have like a moment where she's like, oh my god, you were the sun god and you didn't tell me. And he's like, what's a sun god? And he's like, I'm just rubber. And she's like, god, I forgot he's an idiot, type of a thing, like that type of a reaction. But that may not necessarily come to fruition. That full interaction there may not come to fruition until they are off the island, until they are off of Egghead and hopefully somewhere safer. But I think that's about where I'm going to end it for this one. I don't really have too much else to say that I didn't already either say in the video. But that's what I have. I saw there were a couple of points in time where other people showed up to the stream. So my focus went out. Come back, focus. Come back. Focus on me. Whatever. I'm in it anyway, so we're not going to worry about that. So there it goes, back in focus. So I thank everyone who did show up and anyone who watches this after the fact. I thank you for watching, and I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye.